So a couple of weeks ago, Sony made me reveal every single one of my secrets. We did a live stream talking about YouTube monetization and the like. I'm not going to get into that now, but what I will say is that it was one of the longest videos on my channel. And not that I expect you to go and sit through all 68 minutes of it, there is a way that you can actually make this a little bit shorter, a little bit more bite-sized. In today's video, we're going to teach you actually how to take a seminar or a podcast or a live stream, break it up for different platforms, or if you just want to make separate smaller videos to make things more digestible. This video is going to be sponsored by Riverside, and we're going to go through 4 of the tools that are going to work in its studio, especially for long-form talking head content. But we'll get there. Now, first things first, you're probably going to want to upload the talking head clip into Riverside Studio. Once you've done that, you're going to get a bunch of different options. And one thing I like to do a lot is to actually make sure that I prep that talking head clip in order for it to get started to edit. Now, right now we're in Riverside Studio, and I want to prep a couple of things before we start getting into some of the AI tools. Now, once you've actually uploaded this onto Riverside Studio, you're going to notice you're going to have a couple of different options. One, you're going to have magic clips and full episodes, which AI will generate for you, but we'll get into a little bit later. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with the AI show notes. Now, it's actually pretty easy to do. Once I've clicked show notes, it's going to take a little bit. And what it's going to do is it's going to create a summary for that podcast episode. It's also going to give you some keywords that you can use as your YouTube tags if that's how you want to do it for SEO. And as well, it's also going to give some takeaways. So for example, if someone had missed this episode or this seminar and I wanted to actually give a summary about what it's about to somebody else, I could use something like the takeaways in order to help with that. Or at the very least, I can use that in a description if I want to try to sell the show to somebody else or sell the seminar, or if I just need it for promotional material. Now, when we go down to here, we're actually going to talk about some of the titles that we can use. Now, if I do want to add some titles into the seminar itself, which I could do in post, it's going to give a couple of ideas here as well. There's also some parts where you could have sound bites and stuff like that. If you are somebody that uses Threads or Twitter, you could actually use these as your captions to link back to the original video. Then there's one big thing which I like a lot, and that's going to be the chapters. Now, YouTube gives you the ability to actually use chapters in your video so people can navigate as they want to. Doing this automatically in a seminar or a longer form piece of content is something I actually quite like a lot, because sometimes when it's an hour long, people just want the TLDR version, but you actually get the ability to put up the full episode and people can navigate it using the titles generated by AI. Now, I'm going to show you 2 different ways that you can use magic clips. One could be if you're using a clips channel, for example, you have a podcast on YouTube and you still need 16:9. And the other one you could use for Instagram or TikTok because you could change the orientation of your aspect ratio. So we're going to go back into our project over here. What's also nice about magic clips is that it does give you AI titles, so you actually have some sort of idea of what you actually want to call this piece of content. I'm just going to pick a random one. I'll maybe just get this third one, and I'm going to open this one up. Now, what we have here is going to be a couple of things. Now, text-based editing we'll talk about a little bit later in this video, but one thing I want to do is I want to start to format this magic clip so it's ready for a 16:9 delivery in case I want to make this a shorter YouTube video, which is the entire reason why we're taking this 1 hour and 8-minute video and cutting it down to smaller clips. Now, one thing you're going to have here is going to be on your AI producer. Now, you could actually set the pace that you're going to go in depth about, but one thing I want to make sure that I'm doing is making sure that I have my smooth speech, which actually gets rid of some of the filler words, and as well as I'm going to put on that magic audio. Just in case you didn't do it in the step before or you're doing it after the fact, you could actually do that. So back in the first step, you do have the option to actually put in that AI generated audio enhancement either before you've done everything or individually on the clip. I'm also going to change my aspect ratio. So this is going to be my 16:9. Now, what it's going to look like is about this. Now, keeping in mind, this is actually pulled from a live stream with a picture-in-picture, so its resolution isn't the highest in the world. It'll still output in 4K, but this was downloaded in like 480p. But this is how we're going to look. We talked a lot. We talked a lot about monetization. We talked about a lot of things. We talked about how to be successful as a content creator. And we're going to talk about the thing that should not be named, and that's going to be the algorithm. Now, there's a couple things going on in here as well. We have some captions that are going to be in there, but if you also notice some of the little blanks in our waveform, because we took out some of these filler words, clips like these are going to be a little bit more sharper and concise. Generally speaking, in a live format, sometimes I'll mess up words too, and sometimes I'll have filler words like ums and ahs, and we'll talk about those and getting rid of silences, but in terms of making this magic clip, AI's already generated an interesting part or a segment of an episode, which actually could function on a piece of content on its own. It'll give you the titles in order for you to use it, and at the same time, all I have to do is go to my export. I can export in 1080p or I can export up to 4K, and I could normalize my levels. I can opt to remove some background noise, and I can export from there. But there's 3 other features that I want to get more in depth into, and that's actually going to help really refine editing these smaller form clips in a longer form pieces of content. Now, this is a nice trick. If you are doing something in a talking head format, you can take that clip, you could shrink it down or change the aspect ratio depending on what you want. Now, if I wanted to change this to something like a 1:1, because I still set it to fit the full frame, it's actually going to give you that same aspect ratio without you having to change the size of the clip. So that way, if you're someone that posts on different social media platforms for different aspect ratios, you're going to be able to do this while taking out that 16:9 and reformatting it for smaller social media formats.
Big idea, but you could actually find your best ideas over making a lot of ideas that might not work out the way that you want it to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you guys a challenge over the next 7 days. So write this one down. Each day you're actually going to take a day or an hour or 2 hours, whatever the case might be, and you're going to come up with 30 ideas for.
Now, we did go through some of the basics in creating a magic clip in general, so we're going to start right over here. Now, what's nice about this guy over here is I still have these titles that are generated for me. So one of these is unlocking 30 ideas for YouTube videos in 7 days. I'm just going to pick this one for the sake of this video. Now, keep in mind, this isn't the overall seminar. This is actually just my camera feed that I recorded on my Sony FX3, just in case I wanted to make vertical content of just me talking. That type of content is a little bit more popular than the short form, where there's a fake podcast that goes on with captions to drop piece of information, except this was actually a real podcast format. Now, what we're going to do over here in terms of our layout is that we actually have a couple of options to actually reformat this magic clip. Now, for one, if you have different people that are going to be on here, you could actually change this to be your full screen, your picture in picture if there was something else that was going to be in the background. But as you guys notice, I'm just going to change this to full. What's going to be able to do is take that 16:9 and make it into a 9:16 crop. Now, because it's an AI formatted program, it does actually focus on the face pretty decently. Unfortunately, I haven't figured out how to move this guy around a little bit, but this is where we're going to actually start looking.
You don't necessarily need to get one.
So that's actually it with the enhanced pacing. That actually was pretty good. With AI, sometimes you don't get everything perfect, but that's something that I would use as a piece of social media content for Instagram or TikTok if I wanted to try to promote this fuller, longer form piece of content. Now, you could also resize this if you want to. If you want to make it a reel, I can go right back to 9:16 and it'll fix those things for you. Now, one other thing that you're going to notice that it's going to fix is also those captions, which we're going to get into next.
The relationship business. So your relationships with certain people will get you into certain doors.
So that's what it sounds like without any sort of adjustment on there. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go to my AI producer. I'm going to set the pace, and just for the sake of this video, we're going to set this to super fast, because how else can I talk even faster than I already do? But we're going to do that as well. And another thing that we talked about before is smooth speech. This is going to get rid of some of the filler words, the ums, the ahs, and all that sort of stuff where people actually tell you not to have inside of your videos, but you could only control so much when it's alive. So I'm also going to turn on our smooth speech, and as well as we are going to turn on that magic audio that we've talked about a couple of times. I'm not going to tell me how we did. I'm just going to do this instead. Once all of those things are checked off, we're going to be able to see what this sounds like with the enhanced audio. Now, while that's going, one thing you're going to notice is there's going to be these little black spaces that are in between that waveform. Now, I mentioned this a little bit before, but these are the spaces where I had some sort of awkward silences, and some of these white spaces where they actually removed some of those filler words that I might have said into this magic clip here. So if you notice that these are gaps in those spaces, you're going to actually have a realistic look at how much things are going to be taking out in terms of those awkward silences to make the pacing a little bit faster. Now, the AI audio mixer is going to be on doing its thing, but I can still replay this clip so you can see exactly how the pacing has changed from one clip to the other.
You is, yes, it's word of mouth, but that word of mouth isn't necessarily a client you work for. Sometimes it's people you don't even know that are watching you a lot of the time.
One thing you also can do with these captions, like I mentioned before, is the ability to animate them. So some of you guys like your favorite creators, like Alex Hormozy, where he has the kind of text move in a certain way. You could actually change how that animates by just going over here, and you can play these guys out. So I'm going to do this one over here. I got to put some of this stuff back to where it was before. So typically I would probably recommend doing this animation style beforehand. But once I've gone back to everything, if I play this back one more time, I'm only going to play a couple of seconds of this just to make your life easy.
Is that a lot of the filmmaking video production business is the relationship business. So your relationships with certain people will get you into certain doors.
Now, that's where you could change the animation. So while you're doing these talking head videos, while you're batch recording, or you have a longer piece of content, you can go over to your captions, you could change the animation style, and then you could either use the way that I do things, and you could just copy exactly how I do my fonts and colors, or you could start to make things a little bit more of your own. If you want to change the style, like maybe you want to put a background but still have that being the same thing, you're still going to be able to do that on Riverside, which actually makes things a lot easier to make short form content, but to make them a little bit more stylized as well. Now, I'll also say if you do want to put up a hook or a title or something else to give sort of context to what you're actually doing this reel about, you could actually add in some text. So I could add a title. It'll go right about over here. And one thing that might make your life easier is that if you just take this, you copy what that is, because AI actually generated the title for you. Might be a little bit maybe a little bit long in the tooth, but you can make this longer or shorter. You could adjust that text, and also you could adjust the duration that it's going to be on the timeline in order for you to add sort of a title hook or anything like that for your talking head pieces of content. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to go over to one more feature that is kind of nice, but also been in plain sight the entire time, and that's going to be text-based editing. All right, so now we're going to use the text-based editor. Now, you might want to do this first, or you might want to do it last. The order doesn't actually matter as long as the content gets out. But especially for these talking head videos, if you're using a text-based editor, if it doesn't sound good on paper, it probably might not sound as good in a video, especially when the focus is just yourself. So what we're going to do here is we're actually going to go over to the left, and I'm going to scroll right back up to the beginning of this magic clip in order for us to edit stuff on a text level. Now, what I've done is there's a couple things that I wish that I didn't have in this type of magic clip or a smaller piece of content, because it might not make context or it's not really delivering the point home in a time that I'd like. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete a couple things, and we're actually going to see what it sounds like before and after I've done a little bit of text-based editing.
And the reason why is that a lot of the filmmaking video production business is the relationship business. So your relationships with certain people will get you into certain doors. I don't think I would work as much with some of the companies in the industries that I was if I didn't know those people or know someone that knew that person.
That's what it sounds like when you've done a little bit more refining. Now, there are some parts of this while listening back to again that I could take out as well, or you could add stuff back. You could always just right click on that, kind of highlight over it, and you can restore that text if you want it to be there. Now, one thing I am going to take out is I'm going to kind of put this into here, because I want to take out the explaining that there was an example, when just giving the example makes a lot of sense for the short form piece of content. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to export this, and we're going to see what it looks like before, or what it sounds like before, and I'm going to see how it does afterwards. Now, in terms of my export settings while using Riverside FM, is one thing I'll do is I'll go to my export. I make sure that I export in 4K. I'm going to remove the watermark as I paid for this membership already. You can normalize the audio levels, which I did in post already, or remove background noise, but for the most part, it sounded pretty good. Audio, you can do the same thing. You could choose which audio quality that you want, but for the most part, I'm just going to go to export video, click export, and I'm just going to go to some of the other exports. Now, the way that Riverside is going to deliver that piece of content to you, it's actually going to email it to you. It's not necessarily going to download directly right away, but once you get that email, you'll get a link, you'll be able to email it, and then you can airdrop it to your phone. But let's just see how the final clip looks. And the reason why is that a lot of the filmmaking video production business is the relationship business. So your relationships with certain people will get you into certain doors. I don't think I would work as much with some of the companies in the industries that I was if I didn't know those people or know someone that knew that person, right? Or that person didn't. And the thing is yes, it's word of mouth, but sometimes it's word of mouth from people that you don't even interact with. There was one broadcaster I just talked to, and he watched a video on a transmitter because they were looking for transmitters. And then they're like, oh, this guy's good at stuff. Yeah, we'll bring him on the project. Like you get stuff from, and that's the thing what I mean about putting out a lot of social media content, especially in spec projects where no one's going to stop you. Sometimes it's people you don't even know that are watching you a lot of the time. And there we have it. Those are 5 ways that you can actually prep your seminar or talking head video or a live stream that you might have done in order to make it more digestible for the audience. I understand. Sometimes I might upload some slightly longer videos than usual, and some people might not actually get to watching all of them. Now, one thing you can do is you could repurpose this for different pieces of social media. Like I mentioned before, you could adjust things like your aspect ratio for different platforms, and you can make things longer or you can make them shorter, or you can manually go into the text-based editor if you don't want to use magic clips. However, this is something I like to do, especially when I want to promote different episodes of talking head videos, sort of like this one and some others that are going to be on this channel. Also, I didn't forget, we are so back with the live streams. But if you're watching this video right now, I'm heading to a place where I might not be able to live stream, or will I? That being said, a special shout out to Riverside for sponsoring this video. If you guys are looking at doing some talking head courses, or you have videos that are this kind of style, but you want to repurpose it for other forms of social media, this is going to be something that's going to work really well for you. And it's also easy to understand, at least I hope by the end of this video. See you in the next one. Peace.